Hey guys, Lady Locks here, and so I did a video of picking the Mul-T-Lock the other day, and I had somebody was asking a question about the false sets and some of the stuff that was going on with the lock, so I thought I would make kind of an instructive video a little bit, just kind of showing how I got to be able to pick this lock. So the first thing I did was I marked my key. When you got these and you take the back off of them, the key can be inserted the whole way, all the way up to here. So you know, if you go to put the key in to actually make sure the key pins are correct and things like that, you can accidentally push the key the whole way in and wonder what, why your key pins are all messed up. So that's one reason I mark it. So I took my Sharpie and I marked it right there. You can see the mark on it. And another reason that I mark it is so that I can actually mark my pick. When you're picking these, there are inner and outer pins. The easiest way to make sure that you're hitting the inner pins is to mark your pick for each, for each inner pin. So how I did that was since I have the line there, I know this is where it actually hits the lock. So I basically measure out my pick and I'm going to mark it. The first and the second and the third. Yeah, my third line is a little off. Let's see, let me fix that right now. It should be here. Okay, so I've got it marked out, and now that when I go in to pick the pins, I'll actually have a line to show me the actual inner pin that I need to pick, because you need to pick the outer pins on these and the inner pins on these. So that's a trick to find the inner pins. All right, and it's also by marking the key will help you when you go to gut it and put your lock back together. Having that little mark on the key will help you not to push the key in too far, so you can get the key pins all set in place correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and finish marking the whole way around my pick, so that no matter what position I'm in, I will still have, be able to see the marks. And then we'll put this up in the vise and talk about the different false sets. All right, so I zoomed in pretty close to the lock. So got our key marked. This one only turns this far, so it has something in the back preventing it from going 360, which is fine. We can pick it in that direction. Okay, so I have to pick it clockwise, so I'm going to put my tensioner in and just have it facing up like this. The tighter you can get the tensioner, the better off you are, just for tension control. So I've got that set. I've got my pick marked. I'm gonna get dirty from touching it, but it will definitely help me in the long run, so that I'm hitting every pin that I need to hit. So when you start this off, you want to get the outer pins first and then the inner pins. But I found on this one, that pin one, I hit both the outer and inner one picking it. So, and you can also, if you get the inner pins while you're trying to pick the outer ones, it's not that big of a deal, because you do have to pick the inner pins anyways. But it just it's kind of easier just to get them however you can, really. So that was, I believe, the second pin there. And since I've marked my pick to where the inner pins are, I know the outer pins are going to be in between each of my lines here. So I'll know I'm on the outer pins because it's not actually on a line on my pick. So, but I'm actually hitting them as I go, it seems. So, it shouldn't be a problem though. I'm hoping I didn't overset that fourth one. Went back and really don't think I even set the fifth pin. There it went. Okay. So now you can see I clicked that fifth pin on the inner pin and it gave me a little click. The fourth pin, I'm on the inner pin there because I'm lined up to that line. Alright, I got a tiny little movement. It didn't really click, but it gave me some movement. Here's one. Now, mind you, these inner pins are actually, they've got counter milling, so they're going to be a little bit harder to pick. It's harder to pick with counter milling. It makes it tough. So when you get on one, you're going to need to use lighter tension on these inner pins for sure. You just go through and check each one. All right, and you can see I've got quite a good false set going. It's kind of crooked in the vise here, but if I turn it the right way, you can see that it's got a pretty good false set, but it's not the deep false set that we're looking for. So that means that one of these inner pins is not set. So I'm just going to go through and try to figure out which one. And because I marked my pick, I can get right on them. No problem. Just going by my pick, I can see where they're at, which helps a lot. And I think it's this third one that needs to get set right here. There it is. All right, and now you see I've got this pretty deep false set. Now, I've picked all the outer pins. That was the first thing I did. None of them actually dropped, so they're all set. I picked the inner pins, but remember they're spool pins, so even though I got a click or two out of some of them, there's one in here that is still not, not set. It's going to be an inner driver pin that's actually sitting on an outer key pin, because this is turned so deeply. That outer pin on the key pin part is touching the inner pin on the driver pin part. It's kind of hard to explain. But you can see how deep that false set is. Now, that just means that one of these outer pins is actually just needs to be bumped to get that very last inner pin up in the driver part, the driver inner pin up there to set. So I'm just going to go through and just gently, give each one a push, because it's just a tiny little, it's probably like the littlest bump that it needs, but just slowly, because you're almost done with it, and you shouldn't really get anything. After this, you shouldn't worry that you're gonna hurt anything, because everything's pretty much set, and this deep false set isn't gonna allow anything to overset or anything at that point. So now I'm just gonna touch each thing. And hopefully I'll bump whatever it is that needs pushed. And there it was. Okay, so there you have it. It's not that hard. If you have to measure your flag, it has to be the right size. I will actually share my measurements, which Isaac Cashman actually helped me to measure my flag and give me the correct measurements that I needed, and I filed it down. And as soon as I did that, as soon as I filed this flag and got it ready for this lock, I did not get it stuck after that. So when I was first picking it, the flag kept getting stuck every which way you could think of. It was getting stuck. I was ripping it out of there time and time again. It was super annoying. But once you file it to the perfect size, it's just enough that it hits those inner pins and can push them up without bumping any of the outer pins to overset them. So it ends up really, really helping you. That is a very, very important part of how you pick this lock. You have to have the right size flag. So you are going to have to do some work on it. It didn't take me maybe 5 minutes to file this down and get it the right size. So I will share the measurements with you guys. I'll put them up here, and then you can just get your flag filed to the perfect size. Mark your key, then mark your pick, and follow the steps that I just showed, and you'll be able to get it open. So to gut this one, I need a screwdriver. This one happens to have screws in the back. Yours might be set up differently, but you can see here on the back, this part right here is what prevented this from turning any further. I'll show you. You can see that little piece in there. It only gets to turn this far. So this one was actually just made to go this far. Other ones are made to go 360. It just happens that this one is a little different. So I'm just going to take these screws out of the back, get this back off of here. And I apologize for all the little black spots all over my fingers, but that is from the Sharpie. And I'll take some black spots to get my lock open anytime. So it does help, I mean, tremendously to get that flag measured out properly and to mark it with Sharpie on the inner pins. That made all the difference in me getting that picked and just continuously getting annoyed. So alright, so I'm gonna take my key and put it in here, and now remember, since I took the back off, this key goes the entire way in, and if I push it the entire way in, I can't open the lock because the key pins are all misaligned. So very carefully holding the front of the lock so that I don't pull the core out, I'm going to pull the key just to where that mark was. Now I should be able to turn it. There we go. And I'm just turning it far enough so that these key pins are not lined up with the drivers, obviously. And I definitely don't want this little hole here to be lined up with the drivers because they'll fall in. So just kind of somewhere in the middle of that situation is where you want to put your plug follower in. Okay, so now I'm taking my follower and gently push it through. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and place this in here. I want to kind of show, I don't know if it's going to make a difference or not if I should try to show you where that strange falset comes into place. So when you get that giant falset, basically this is going to be lined, you know, like this almost. So there would be your falset, and you can see that, you know, these key pins are now the thing that's aiming this way is going to be that outer pin, not the inner one. The inner one's going to be too far over to be lined up with any of the drivers. So then the drivers are going to be coming down, and one of the inner drivers is going to be sitting now on an outer part of these key pins just because of how this is turned. So you would have that coming down, and it's going to be touching one of the outer pins, and that is why, you know, the very last step of this is going to be to pick that outer key pin, because one of them is touching the inner driver up top, whichever one it was. I think it was I think it might have been number 4 actually that was touching. So it kind of comes down, it's touching it like that, and so that when I picked it, I bumped the inner pin of the driver, and then it hit the shear line and the core turned. So that's kind of what happens on that very last step. But that's only because you go into such a huge falset that those, you know, those inner pins are now completely missing, you know, the line of the drivers that are coming down. So that's what's happening there. Okay, as far as how to gut this one, basically you're just doing like you know, regular gutting. Just be aware that there are inner and outer pins on this, so you've got to make sure that you don't mess those up. So you kind of pull all of them out. They're both coming out together. Alright, just set this aside for now. But let's see, what else did I want to show you? This one actually has the counter milling on it. And well, I'll show you that when I get these drivers out. I'm not going to take out any of the springs on this. Another thing, if you don't have this notch on your lock, definitely mark the front with some type of Sharpie or something so that you know that that's the front of the lock. That can happen sometimes. I make it a habit of putting this end in first on all the locks that I got, unless I need this end for the attachment, whatever. But otherwise I will put this end in first, so that if I forget to mark the cylinder somehow, I can always remember that this is the front. But once you remove this and you're trying to put everything back in, you're not going to remember which end was the front. So just be aware that you may need to mark it. All right, and so now you see these coming out. You can see that little inner and outer pin there. That was pin 1. All right, so with these, this little spool piece here is going to come down and it's going to get stuck in the counter milling of the key pins, and that's what makes it tough to pick them, because this counter milling is here and it's getting in the way. That outer pin out of there, it's on this end. Here we go. So yeah, that counter milling is going to catch on the inside of that spool, and it makes it tough to pick them, because they get stuck in there, especially when everything is turned. When you've got yourself a false set and it's leaning into that counter milling, and it makes it tough to pick those inner pins. Some of them have, some of these inner pins, inner driver pins, are going to be, I guess they can be standard, they can be spooled like this one, or they can be serrated, depending on the inner pins and if there's counter milling or not. That's what would determine the belt level of your lock. If you're going by the LPU belt system, that will determine the level of your lock. It's just having, either counter milling or spools or serrations. And then let me show you the counter milling inside of here. It's very small but effective. Is that coming in on focusing? Sorry, my phone is ringing and messing up my camera. There you go. You can see that tiny little counter milling right in there, and that tiny little bit of milling really makes it tough to pick those inner pins. So that's what makes this lock hard, is having the counter milling, touching those spools or serrated pins, getting them caught. And once you get into that false set, it starts leaning into that counter milling more and more. So each one you pick gets tougher and tougher to actually pick, because that counter milling is getting really leaned on heavily by those. And then that very last false set, like I said, that one, the middle pin there will fall into the outer driver pin. So that's what's going on there. And I'm just leaving the springs inside of here because I have a hard time finding them once they get away from me, and I don't want to chance it again. I'd probably pull one out to show you though, but they're pretty crazy springs. Okay, so each one has a spool on it. Let me just get this spring out, the very last spring here. There it is. Alright, so check out these springs on this. They are very big, and they go flying, and you really can't see them. I lost twice now. I thought I lost the spring, and it was laying just differently in my pinning tray. And I actually went and looked for it all around on the floor and stuff, and here it was in my pinning tray the whole time. So you can easily lose them. But here are the pins inside this lock. If you're doing this lock, if you're making a video for your belt on this lock, you need to show the spool on each one of these drivers. You need to show the spool or the serrated pins, and then you need to bring each key pin up into, into the camera and show the serrations, or I'm sorry, show the counter milling on each key pin if you're going to use this for your belt. So just make sure to bring them up and show everything. Make sure to keep it in focus and in frame, each part of the lock in frame and everything. Now for putting these back together, I'm going to kind of bring this focus down a bit and try to show you, because when I was first putting it back together, I didn't pay attention to how I took it apart, which is really, really bad. You should never ever do that. You should always pay attention to how you're taking them apart, what you're doing with them. What I did not. So when you're putting these back together, you put the outer pin in here first, and then you take the inner, this little inner pin, and you'll see one end of this inner pin is flat. Let me bring it into focus. The top of it is kind of flat, and then this is pointed, and you're going to lay it in with the pointed edge down. And if you just set it in there, it will find the middle of that. Whoa! Or you'll shoot it across the room like I just did, but I didn't lose it, thankfully. But of course, there's always something. Always something goes wrong. So hopefully that will be it for me on this video, but usually I have multiple things go wrong. So I'm just going to pop it in here, and you'll see it fell right into the center there. You can actually put your key in as well, so you can actually make sure they all line up. But again, this is where that line, having that little line on your key comes in handy as well. So now you see, because if you didn't put that line on and you go to push the key the whole way in, these key pins are not going to look like they are lined up, and you're going to think that something's wrong when it's not. So there's the line that I put on the key. And I'm just going to put back each one like I showed you. You can see, I guess, you can see how the bottom is a little bit different from the top of these as well. And you can actually see all the marks on that bottom from where it was being picked. So that's the bottom, and this is the top. There's the counter milling inside of it. You can see that. You can just lay that in here. And the inner pin. Making sure that little flat spot is facing up and the pointed spot is facing down. Whoa! Yeah, so yeah, there's always something goes wrong. Every time I try to make a video, something goes wrong. Bump that one. Alright, and there you go. There's another reason that having that line on there comes in handy for when you bump it and screw it up and you have to fix it and do it all over again. Okay, so here we are again. You can see they're correct because when you turn the key, it slides right in there. But so that's it. You're just going to put those in. I just wanted to show you how they get put in, because when I first took mine apart, like I said, I didn't pay attention to it, and I sat here for a minute and I forgot that the key, I forgot about the fact that key, you know, that key goes in, can go in the full way, and there can be issues. Alright, so my fourth pin has 3 parts to it. It's got outer part and an inner part. Let's see. So this part goes first. You can see it's beat up from being picked, so I know that actually goes in facing down. Should put that in. Oh, here we go again, losing parts. Okay, now the second piece. And that actually had counter milling on it. I didn't realize it had it, but it does. You can see it in there. And then this piece here all goes in facing down. Then our last pin, of course, which also has the counter milling on it. Which you can see there, maybe. There it is. Yeah, each one has that countermilling to act with those spools. This one has spools. I'd love to pick one with serrations. I'll have to go hunting one down, I guess. Alright, so you know it's correct because you can spin it in here. So all the key pins are correct. Then we can put all the drivers in here. Remembering where you started, and with these ones you want that little pointed end to come, you know, point toward the key pins. So that's 1, that's 2, and that's 3. Sorry, I just have to check and make sure I've got the right amount of space in there. Okay, so key pin number 3, and like I said, you want to keep this pointed piece at the top sticking out, and so I found a way to do it was to hold it from that little guy. When you're putting it back into the lock, if you hold that little piece like that, you can get it in way easier than trying to hold the other way. So down there and pick it up by that little spool, pushing it down in there. All right, now spot 2. Spot 1. All right. And number 4 spring. And number 5. Whoops. Okay, so now everything's in there. Got all the springs, got all the pins. The key pins are, the key pins are correct. I'm gonna probably pull the key out of here though, because it's easier to put this back together without that key in there. So hopefully I can pull the key out without losing all my pins. All right, so we know they're in the right place. We don't need a shim for this. We need to put it through the front. You want to turn it just so that nothing, this isn't lined up with the drivers, and these aren't lined up with the drivers. So kind of somewhere in the middle, you're going to hold on to that, and that's what's going to be aiming towards the drivers. And you're just going to slide that straight in. And now turn it into the closed position. And you're going to put the back on here. Oops. Yeah, this is a really fun lock to pick as long as you first make your pick. That's the most important thing to do. And then you make your marks. You make your marks on your pick, so you know where all the inner pins are going to be. Make sure you mark your key so you know how far to put it into the lock for gutting and reassembling purposes. And also so you can mark your pick. You can measure your pick by, actually when I had that gutted I should have shown you, but you can measure your pick to make sure it's the right size, you know, by measuring those inner pins and making sure that your flag fits enough to, you know, if you were going up in here, that it would fit on the inner pin there and be able to turn, which this sized flag does. So you can check out the flag dimensions at the end of this video. I will leave them there as well. Yeah, let's just double check that everything's in working order, and it is. So that is amazing. All right, a lot of fun to pick. I hope this video kind of helped clear up some of the questions that I left from making my other video. I apologize. I believe the dimensions of the flag that you need to, you know, file your flag down to that size. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy it, please click the like button. If you like my channel, please subscribe, and have a great day. Take it easy, everybody.